I want to talk about a impressive statistic in my opinion when it comes to ICP. Now I'll get to the price recovery that I've seen as of late when it comes to ICP later, which had around a 10% recovery in the past 24 hours. Again, I'll talk about that very soon, but I'll talk about this real quick, even though nothing I say is financial advice. But according to ChainSpect, they had this chart showcasing most used blockchains by total transactions since token generation event. However, guess who was ranked number one in the world, right? You guessed it right, probably. It's ICP. ICP, by the way, has been able to have, right, transactions that have amounted to 275 billion, again, total transactions. That's over double something like Solana, which actually is the second place in this chart, and Solana is actually at 104 billion. So again, if we take a look at it right there, this is pretty impressive in my opinion. Again, ICP is more than Hedera, more than Stellar, apparently, according to this chart, more than Algorand, more than Near, more than Base, supposedly even more than like Bitcoin, from what I can see this chart. I mean, this is just what I noticed, right? And I'll put the chart on the screen, but I'm saying I do find this to be pretty cool if hypothetically this seems to be the case, because again, a lot of people like to say, oh, the internet computer isn't really being used. However, I still see activity when it comes to this. This is pretty impressive in my opinion. However, keep in mind, these are total transactions since token generation event. Is ICP the first ever project within this space? Of course not, right? I mean, Bitcoin's the first, but I'm saying this is pretty impressive in my opinion. I mean, if let's say in the next 5 years, the total transactions when it comes to ICP jumps from maybe 275 billion to maybe half a trillion, who knows? It wouldn't necessarily surprise me, especially considering this impressive statistic again that I saw recently. If it's already having 275 billion approximately right now, what can it do later? So I do find this to be pretty interesting. Again, right, this is over double Solana. Pretty impressive in my opinion. Does it mean it's over 2 times more popular than Solana? No, it doesn't mean that. I mean, Solana is way more popular than this, but in terms of the raw statistics, this is pretty impressive. However, I think what this highlights right here is just the stage in which this space is in as of right now. Like for instance, Luna Classic is ranked way higher than some other projects out there that have strong fundamentals. Why is that? I think as of right now, people value more like the vibes, the cool factor, something like that, right? They care about like the it factor, so to speak. It's not necessarily tied to like a utility driven thing. It's not like that's the determining factor. So when people like to say, oh, if ICP is ranked the first in this chart, why is it not more popular than Solana? Well, again, within this space, as of right now, in my opinion, values more of a different, criteria, right? I think a lot of massive projects out there, if they have a good community, if they have a lot of historical notoriety, or if it's like pretty cool, it almost doesn't really matter in some cases if the fundamentals are good or not. Sometimes they just go along with the ride. Just take a look at Shiba Inu and Dogecoin. If let's say this market was only determined based off of fundamentals, ICP would, in theory, right, if that criteria was the only thing that was considered, it'd actually be maybe higher than something like Shiba Inu and Dogecoin in terms of market cap, but it clearly isn't. So again, when people like to tell me, yeah, again, this chart, it hasn't done anything when it comes to ICP, it doesn't mean much. Yeah, well, it's because that's not the main criteria as of right now. But at the same time as well, ICP doesn't even really need to become the best of all time. In my opinion, if let's say ICP could just go back to like around $9, again, we're still below $3. So we're over 3 times lower than that. That's just back at $9. I'm already going to Sizzler at that point. That's kind of the way you take a look at it. So yes, this space as of right now doesn't necessarily value like the best of the best fundamentals. But ICP, again, it doesn't need to become so groundbreaking in terms of popularity. Just going back to $9, just because we're so hypothetically low, despite this small recovery, I would say, again, just going to $9, I'm not going to complain about that. I'm already going to Sizzler. So again, I understand that the internet computer is never going to become the most popular project within this space, despite whatever goes on fundamentally, just because, again, this space as of right now doesn't really value, I think, too much the fundamentals. I think it's more so like, the vibe, the cool factor, the community. I think that type of stuff is more so valued right now. But it doesn't mean that, again, that wouldn't change, right? Because who knows, 10 years later, 15 years later, it could be different. But nonetheless, if we just take a look at it strictly during this cycle, ICP doesn't need to become more popular than Dogecoin or Shiba Inu. I don't think so. Just because it's so hypothetically low, relatively speaking to where it once was, if it just goes back to $9, go in a sizzler. If it goes back to $15, which we even saw during the cycle, and almost $19 also, not that long ago, without altcoin season, we saw that, right? If it just goes to that, I'm going to sizzler even more times. $9 going to sizzler, $15 going to sizzler more times. If it's almost $19 again, I'm going to sizzler even more times than before. So the thing is, just because ICP is so hypothetically low in my opinion, even with this slight recovery, it doesn't even really need an altcoin season to maybe do something. If let's say ICP, the pullback wasn't as extensive, let's say it only had a pullback to $10 or whatever, then yeah, of course, if it just goes back to $19, that's kind of boring, right? I mean, it's not really that exciting anymore at that point. But then actually, because ICP had such a massive pullback, now if it just returns back to previous levels, which many people didn't even think was an altcoin season anyways, it's already going to sizzler for me. Anything I dollar cost average here, really, if it just goes back to $9, again, we're over 3 times lower than that. We're over 5 times lower than $15. We just saw $15 not even that long ago, right? Altcoins as of right now, they're so kind of low, right? If they just went back to some levels that they saw in 2024, 2025, again, it's already quite impressive in a lot of cases just because a lot of projects out there actually reach a new all-time low, which ICP did not that long ago, by the way. Around 5 months ago, ICP reached a new all-time low. So just imagine that, all-time low. So it was literally lower than 2022 at one point, right? I mean, if we think about it, again, all-time low around 5 months ago. All-time low literally means the lowest the project has ever been, right? In terms of the price, basically, in the existence of it, right? If I were to even consider that, because again, the all-time low, that means throughout all the time, that was the lowest it's ever been. We saw that around 5 months ago, which is so bizarre for me to see, actually. That's just my reaction. So this is why it'd be a different case if ICP never had reached $9 or $10 or $15 or almost $19. It'd be a different case because again, if that never happened, I can't really point back to a time and said, oh wow, that happened. Again, there would be no way for me to do that if that never happened, but it actually did, right? Not that long ago, ICP was around $9. A bit farther back, it was almost at $19. If it either goes to $9, $10, $15, anywhere between $9 to almost $19, I'm not going to complain. And I don't think that was even an altcoin season. So does a hypothetical altcoin season necessarily need to happen, especially if I'm dollar cost averaging into ICP at below $3? I think personally for me, it's not really necessary, right? I mean, it'd be awesome if there was one. But if it doesn't happen, let's say hypothetical altcoin season, let's just say it goes back to the previous levels, which I don't even think was an altcoin season, it's already quite impressive, maybe in some cases just because of how much ICP had a pullback. However, I'm not telling anyone to do anything, but I'm still holding. And that's pretty much about it. I'm still staying patient, but that's all I can do. However, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you all have a very nice day. It's Malik the Captain, and I'll see you all in the next one. I'm out. Peace. Bye.